And the dissenting opinion on the Obamacare ruling was just as strong in many cases. But a lot of conservatives see the Obamacare ruling as like the end of the republic as we know it. But Clarence Thomas is talking here in 2005, and he says, look, because of this ruling on medical marijuana, the federal government no longer has any meaningful limits. The scope of their power is unlimited. And so for the federal government to come in and say that we can't grow any kind of crop, that we can't engage in any kind of commerce, the interesting thing about this ruling was that there was no commerce happening, and yet it fell under the Commerce Clause ruling. And they based some of this off of a previous ruling in the 40s called Wickard versus Filburn, which was a guy during the FDR administration when there was limits on the amount of wheat that you could grow or crops that you could grow. And the Supreme Court said that, he was violating a federal mandate because it had to do with how the growth of that extra wheat impacted the commerce in the nation. Okay, so because he was growing this extra wheat, he wasn't buying it on the open market. And if more and more and more people did that, that would impact the price of that marketplace, right? I mean, if a lot of people got that idea, well, they used a very similar line of thinking with marijuana, even to the point where the argument was made that what Angel Rach was doing was impacting the national marijuana commerce, which was illegal currently, okay? But the point is that this is a significant ruling, I think, on many levels because of what its impact is on the meaning of the 10th Amendment. I mean, Clarence Thomas even actually said, look, the problem with this ruling is they haven't declared the 10th Amendment a dead letter. They basically are just acting like it doesn't exist. And so, after this happened, the Supreme Court ruled on this case. All of the states that passed medical marijuana laws probably repealed them, right? No. None of them did. In fact, Rhode Island's like, okay, yeah, no, we heard that Supreme Court decision, but we're passing medical anyway. 2007, New Mexico, medical marijuana. District of Columbia. Okay, Obama's only significant thing that he's done to remotely be close to fulfilling a promise that he made, which was that he was not going to continue to use Justice Department resources to wage the war on drugs. Marijuana dispensary rates and IRS audits have actually increased under his administration, but he did reduce the 100-to-1 sentencing to 18-to-1. So it's still 18 times harder sentencing for the same amount of crack and powder cocaine, but because he did powder cocaine, he wanted to make sure that that didn't become too illegal. No. But that did happen, and I bring it up because it did occur. I will give props where due. Could have went further. New Jersey marijuana, medical, Delaware, Michigan. Okay, 2012. So this comes to just this year. Massachusetts just did in this election 2 weeks ago. Connecticut, I actually believe it happened earlier this year. I could be wrong about that, but I believe so. But then we get to something very interesting. We get to Colorado. Now, who's aware that Colorado has? So people 21 and over can possess up to an ounce of cannabis for any purpose. So that has just recently happened. These are privately run stores.
Isn't it 6 plants too?
I believe so. And some of these laws, some of them are actually, I don't think they've even determined what the amounts are, possibly. Washington may have, but I don't know that at the time.
The legislature would meet.
Yeah, they're going to determine, this one was a limited amount for recreational purposes. Washington, I believe, is state-run stores rather than, so I would say a little less freedom there, but it's still recreational marijuana use, okay? And so the big question is does it matter? The federal government can still, and probably will still, try to wage war on these dispensaries that are legal under the law of those states. And many of these we see, they passed by a good margin. Many of them are through ballot initiatives. So the real question, I think, is now that we have 18 states that have some sort of legislation, I believe, medical legislation. I don't know if the total is 18 or 19 right now. But the point is that the states have decided, continue to decide, that Supreme Court ruling doesn't matter. And it begs the question, and the question that we continue to come back to, that Jefferson and Madison came back to in 1798 when the term nullification was really started to be thrown around in history, which was the idea of what happens when the federal government won't obey its own document. What do we do when it oversteps its bounds? And was the Supreme Court to be the final arbiter of all things constitutional? And this is something that is up for debate. I believe Randy Barnett, who's highly respected among some regarding constitutional authority and law, I believe he makes a suggestion that what needs to happen is that a constitutional nullification amendment needs to be instituted, and that we need to pass an amendment that allows the states to nullify federal laws. But that seems ironic to me, when the problem is the federal government not obeying the Constitution. So we're saying, we need to introduce a constitutional law, basically saying, look, the federal government has decided they don't need to pass an amendment to wage the drug war. They did when alcohol prohibition happened, which is an important model. And I believe we have a unique time to talk to conservatives about this issue for a number of reasons. Because a lot of conservatives are waving around the Constitution these days. Most of them don't realize that the drug war is unconstitutional. Most of them don't realize we can't afford it. Most of them don't realize that drug use has not been reduced in any measurable sense since it's been going on, so it's a failure. It's actually almost every argument that they make about Obamacare. It's not going to work, we can't afford it, and it's unconstitutional. And realizing that when we want to get people to look at this idea of constitutional consistency, the idea that we're not okay with the federal government taking power that doesn't belong to it when it's an issue that I believe in. Right? So, hey, national health care, well, that's socialism. Right? But marijuana, well, I don't like those pot smokers, right? That's how it goes. And so I think we have an opportunity to confront people who hold a misguided position on that. I also think what we're seeing happen is the generational breakdown in popular opinion about the drug war. We're seeing the fact that people are able to get educated about this idea, that it's not the gatekeepers of information. Nobody can get away with talking about, the crazy minorities who want to sleep with white women when they get on drugs, right? Okay? That doesn't work. So I've got just a little, I don't have that much time. I got a few minutes before I'll open it up. Has anybody seen, there's a great movie out called The House I Live In. It's a documentary. That just recently came out by the guy who did the movie Why We Fight, which is another great documentary. But it's a movie on the drug war. I highly recommend you check it out. It's just recently come out. It was in one theater locally for 1 week. It was kind of sad. I went and saw it one night. I was the only person sitting in the theater. Because I go to the movies by myself sometimes. I just realized that made it sound like I was sort of a loser. The House I Live In. But it makes a very interesting assertion in this film. And I'm going to throw this out here because it's such a bold assertion, but I think it's really well supported in this film. They talk about the drug war in the United States as a type of Holocaust. And now that's very highly charged and like, whoa, really? But what this one scholar talks about is that what genocides all over throughout history have had in common are 5 attributes. The identification of a group of people that you want to marginalize. Then ostracizing them from popular society, giving them a stigma. Then confiscating what they own. Then concentrating them into ghettos or certain geographic areas, and then finally annihilating them, right? He makes this argument that essentially that's what's happened in the drug war. And with meth especially, the rise of meth has been really like the first one where a lot of white people are getting caught up in this, honestly. Because it's a lot of lower class people who live in the sticks. You know, it's trailer trash. And what this guy ends up making the argument that it's groups of people that society doesn't need anymore, doesn't want around, that they go ahead and they identify them, ostracize them, confiscate their wealth and their person, move them into areas out of sight, out of mind, and finally get rid of them. Well, the drug war isn't sending people off to their deaths specifically and instantly, but with mandatory sentencing, those types of things, some people are serving life sentences for nonviolent offenses. So anyway, it's a really bold assertion, but I encourage you to go check out that film. And that felt like it was a little off topic, but I wanted to promote it because I'm a documentary filmmaker, and so anyway. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about nullification specifically, because I didn't specifically talk in detail about nullification. And I'd be happy to do that. I wanted to get to the drug war material and what's going on in the drug war right now and drug war nullification. So questions? KJ?
A lot of questions, but I'll stick with one. When I'm speaking with people about ending the drug war, specifically marijuana, a lot of people that I meet, they say that it would be a great way to raise revenue for the state through taxation. However, I don't like raising revenue for the state anyway. So my question is, what is a solid response to that?